Hello, Internet. My name is Chamomile.
I'm Requiem. Something happened to your arm?
Oh, yeah. Some of the aliens on this ship captured me, and I think they installed some kind of microchip in me as part of their plan to invade the Earth by deciphering our, like, D tier podcasting technology. I don't really understand their plan, but it definitely wasn't there before the operation.
It's, let me hold on. Huh. Wonder, I wonder if we could reprogram it.
I mean, probably, if you can find some way to access it. There's probably some way to wirelessly interface it on this ship. Why? What did you have in mind?
I mean, I do have this wire. Hold on, let me plug that right in.
I
Just
mean, it's
wondering,
kind of
if I could,
strange that you can just plug that in through the skin, but I guess that's a neat feature.
I'm gonna work on reprogramming it. Just so it doesn't hurt you. Like, I'm not gonna do anything about stuff.
Are you sure? Because that feels like something you would say before doing something evil.
Cam, Cam, how many Requiem clones have you gone through?
That's fair. So, have you read anything interesting about robots lately?
Not since the last time, unfortunately. I've started some stuff. I'm working on some notes, and I'm hoping before before we're done with Mass Effect, that I will have like a big thing that I could talk about. But for the time being, not particularly.
I think that's the one I'm looking for. All right. I think I may have been too specific. Maybe I should open this up a little. Have you read anything perhaps mind-numbingly dull about robots?
I'm not going to name it, but yeah, I was trying to read a book about the history of robots that got like 50 pages through the introduction and was like, yeah, I'm going to move on to something else.
Honestly, I think a book having a 50-page introduction is your first warning sign.
I have a lot
Maybe,
more common in like English lit like books.
yeah, like maybe I'm just not reading enough academic texts. That would be fair, but
Like a lot of academic text, you cannot skip the introduction, which is what I would do with a non-academic piece of nonfiction. Usually, like I don't bother with the introduction.
actually, I started skipping the introduction in the D&D books I write. I used to give them all introductions because that's just what you do, but at this point, I'm like, okay, doing a sort of a hard cut to real content might be a little bit jarring, but it's a more efficient use of page space, so it's not like it's confusing at all, so what am I killing the trees for at this point?
That is fair.
Besides my hatred of trees, which, in fairness, is pretty vitriolic.
Yeah, I don't understand why, like,
Look, they've got more arms than us, and they think it makes them better than us. And yeah, I know.
Do they though? Like, I'm not sure they think.
Okay, well, I mean, sure they don't communicate.
Did you figure out how to talk to plants and not tell me?
Look, I can see it in their eyes, the ones that have eyes, and then I'm generalizing to the rest.
What plants have eyes?
Well, like a little knot in the tree, are sometimes referred to as an eye. It is a real thing.
Oh, so another thought about replicants, about Blade Runner. That's interesting because I mentioned like a normal image is cold, both in terms of like it's literally made of metal, but it's also emotionally cold. But I really think you can make a case for like the clearest like predecessor of the robot being Frankenstein, who is made of flesh and is also relatively emotional. Like, even though like the modern robot is very like almost always made of metal or something like metal, like closest like or potentially plastic.
Plastic sometimes, yeah.
You will see Frankenstein referenced a lot in the early robot literature. It's clear that like Frankenstein does get looked to as an inspiration for a lot of the early robot literature, even though like it's sort of like not really what we recognize as a robot. I'm not sure like that the first classic robot would be. Like I've mentioned that, like I'm not at the point where I can say like, oh, this is the first like robot. Like it's potentially Live I'm probably slaughtering that pronunciation.
I mean, it sounded slaughtered, but I can't help you, so.
I'll just say it in English, the future Eve. But even like the piece of literature that we get the word robot from, Rossum's Universal Robots, they're creatures of flesh and they're creatures of emotion in ways that we don't. They're very similar to the replicants, and they're sort of like essentially a slave race that has been biologically created rather than artificially. So there's this precedent for warm, fleshy robots. And like I said, you see Frankenstein.
I think Frankenstein is a great example of an early robot. It's definitely not a central example. It's before the form was really nailed down. But I think it's entirely in character that this guy's just hanging out during a firefight, and I love it. But I think because you'll even. Okay, now. One second while I figure out where the hell I'm going. Yep, no, I got into where I was going and then immediately got turned around. But one thing that you'll hear a lot in robots fiction, and this is definitely not ubiquitous or anything, but you'll sometimes hear phrases like "going Frankenstein" for robots who rise up against their masters.
There's this early robot story that features a robot who is his creator has deliberately tried to keep him away from the book Frankenstein specifically. Finds it. So the Frankenstein references are everywhere.
Right? Yeah. Like I think it's
a lot more
robot to call Frankenstein the first robot just on those grounds alone. That has informed later robots so much.
Yeah, because Olympia predates him by a year, but she is essentially a product of magic. Like the guy just looks at this. Like she's a lot closer to like Galatea.
Right.
Like she gets looked at, and that animates her.
Galatea. I mean, I could see calling Galatea a robot, but I think she lacks being created, being animated by a mortal human, which I think is important.
Yeah, even comparing Galatea to
was carved by a mortal human, but she was animated by the gods, which ultimately doesn't make her that different from humans, or at the very least animals, in almost all creation myths, right?
Yeah.
So I think what sets a robot apart, you can tell I've been doing more thinking about what is the definition of a robot, because I feel like I'm generally really good at kind of nailing how these things get actually used, but the robot one caught me off guard. But yeah, I think it's a robot is an intelligence that is created by not just artificially but by mortal hands. A flawed creature is nevertheless able to imbue the spark of life into inanimate matter.
Yeah.
No idea where the hell I'm going. I'm just going to wander around until there's more guards in front of me than behind.
At some point, we're going to find the Arachnite Queen. Now, have you ever seen the movie Metropolis?
Is she in the Hot Labs? I think she might be in the Hot Labs.
Have you ever seen the movie Metropolis?
I don't think so.
So this is another very early piece of robot literature. You see it referenced a lot in later robot stuff. There was even a Robot Chicken sketch about it. Janelle Monáe's one of her first albums, The Arc Android, has a lot of reference to this. It comes out of Weimar Germany. The politics of the movie are kind of disjointed, and there's a reason for this, and I'm going to explain to you why, and you're going to be like, are you making that up? And I'm going to be like, no. The director was Jewish, and the writer was a Nazi, and they were married.
Are you making that up?
I'm not. But the central android, so there's this woman who lives among the workers, and like already Maria, Mary, she's a form of the Virgin Mary. Oh, Matriarch Benezia, finally. I had so much trouble with this battle.
But then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked.
But,
Yep, Thorian had one.
And the scientist creates a robot replica of her. At first, you see it as a sort of like golden image, like very clearly artificial and electric, but then this weird scientific process has it, and it takes the appearance of Maria. And this robot Maria goes and causes chaos. She does like a very like erotic, but like erotic by the standards of the 1930s. So dance that drives a bunch of upper class men insane. But like it's just very interesting. Are you familiar with the?
So her ankles are visible. Scandalous.
It's more explicit than that, but it's also like. It's a really weird dance. But, are you familiar with the, Madonna horror dichotomy?
Yes. Like the Uncanny Valley, I think it's fairly common. I am briefly terrified whenever I get knocked out by one of these Asari.
You need to heal.
There it is. I keep forgetting what the heal command is, especially because it stopped working in the Mako. I wasn't able to heal there.
You to do the heal command, you open yourself up to the corruption.
So Benezia's power level goes down every time she summons reinforcements. I gotta wonder, is it because I'm on little easy mode difficulty that she doesn't seem to be doing anything else? Because the opening cutscene implied, and I seem to remember that she would actually, use her powers on me at all.
Maybe you fight her after.
There is a fight with her at the end, but I seem to remember her doing stuff during this part, which is why her power level keeps descending while I kill all her mooks. Except, all she seems to be doing with her powers in this fight is opening doors.
So, the Madonna horror dichotomy, and you have it ensconced in these two characters, though the robot is the representation of the horror, the cold creature of mechanical artifice, rather than the actual living woman, which is interesting because if you look at the future Eve, it's kind of the opposite. And again, you have the very explicit reference to the Madonna, since the original's name is Maria.
Start talking, Benezia. What's Saren's next move? I will not betray him. You will.
And you see,
You must listen.
you see this idea played with in movies like Ex Machina or Splice with Dren.
We met Shiala on Theros. She told us about Sovereign's indoctrination. to be trapped in your mind. To feed upon
Also, again, I do think you're supposed to have recruited Liara by this point, and she's supposed to have a confrontation with her mother.
Yeah, nah, she has a confrontation here, but
tool for Saren.
we're doing things basically just to torture Liara maximally.
Position was lost thousands of years ago.
Yeah, not only is this the one that it makes the most sense to go to last, Liara is the one that potentially makes the most sense to go to first.
Someone on Noveria found it? 2,000 years ago, the Rachni inhabited that region of our galaxy. They discovered the relay. The Rachni can share memories across generations. Queens inherit the knowledge of their mothers. I took the location of the relay from the Queen's mind. I was not gentle.
You can still make it right. Give me the information.
I was not myself, but I should have been stronger.
Okay, I wasn't asking you to make an excuse. I was asking you to help make it right.
To an OSD. Take it, please.
Knowing the relay's coordinates
Off-screen
isn't
handoff.
enough. We need to know
I love the BioWare handoff.
Saren wouldn't tell me his destination, but you must find out quickly. I transmitted the coordinates.
It's
to
weird that they always insist on, or not always, but almost always insist on filming it from like the waist up. This would look a lot better if you started at the shoulders.
His teeth are at my ear, fingers on my spine. You should. Ah, you should
Oh, thank God. For a second, I thought I was going to be denied a boss fight.
die.
I do have to say, I'm not a
Acting
big
up-
fan of the dialogue of, Venezia fighting the...
Yeah, it was not great.
Control.
That was not great.
Yeah, it was very generic and tropey, which does not fit with Mass Effect's, especially Mass Effect's 1. Generally, more, I guess, grounded, thought-out style. Like, Mass Effect is generally doing a lot of things differently, but then here we have this extremely generic, switch-flipping mind control.
Yeah, because it's like
Weird.
Saren was his
Yeah, the mind control on Saren was really well done, and it's supposed to be basically the same kind of mind control on Venezia, but
the mind control being on Venezia seems like just standard sci-fi mind control.
I cannot
Yeah.
go on. You will have to stop him, Shepard.
You're free of the indoctrination again?
why
I
shoot her?
hear it like metal on metal, squealing and reverberating.
Which is why I have to shoot you. No hard feelings.
No light. They always said there would be a...
Like it is kind of just like, okay, there she goes. But like, she's free of the indoctrination. We know for a fact this ain't gonna last. We should be shooting her now.
Alright, now it's Looter Corpse for valuables. Oh, and she's doing the thing that the aliens did in Independence Day.
Yeah.
Stick over a dead body.
It's funny that Shepard doesn't open fire, considering that this is the corpse of her enemy.
Serves as our voice.
Particularly since plot-wise, it wouldn't make a difference. This is a corpse.
Not seen. Not in these low spaces. Your music.
It's funny because we just got done with a very tropey, boilerplate sci-fi mind control conversation, but now we've actually got a pretty good conversation with Arachne.
Musics? What?
Your way of communicating is strange, flat. It does not color the air. When we speak, one moves all. We are the mother. We sing for those left behind. The children you thought silenced. We are Rachni.
Did you order your people to kill the science team?
That's not what I asked at all.
We were locked away here. The children are beyond our songs. They have been lost to silence. The children we birthed were stolen from us.
So the Sasari has a sort of a jerky kind of animation when she talks. There's kind of an issue, though, which is that
They cannot
she's clearly looping through the same couple of animations over and over again,
harm as they are.
which really takes away from, the twitchiness of it all.
All right. I don't think they'll give me a choice anyway.
Before you deal with our children, we stand before you. What will you say? Will you release us? Are we to fade away once more?
Making this choice
The Ragnar
feels
were a threat to the galaxy.
a lot
Thanks
less
to
important.
Blizzards, if she gets out of hand, they dissolve her.
She's the last of her race, Shepard. We don't have the
Yeah, none of this matters.
objectivity
Yeah.
to judge her.
Your companions hear the truth.
Like, if the Rachni just never came up again,
Or return our
then I would be okay with the idea with that. 'Cause, I mean, I'm gonna...
Make your peace with the galaxy. The Rachni are a dead.
Oh, you're
race.
killing her?
We can't exterminate.
Yeah, mainly just to give the middle finger to BioWare, who insists that she survives.
Genocide is one of the reasons we fought the Krog.
Is our kind so frightening? You would seek our silence if you cannot muffle our songs? If you cannot have us as your obedient claws?
Is this because the brain parasite doesn't want to rifle?
We will not embrace the great silence.
Yeah, it's basically just me giving the middle finger to BioWare storytelling.
And you say BioWare storytelling, but I feel like it's EA's storytelling.
Ah, this was pre-EA.
Mass Effect, I think Mass Effect 3 they had been bought by EA.
That's true. And this isn't really only
Like, it's
became a
not, this
problem
is not,
in
the
Mass
issue
Effect
here
3.
is not, because
It's
the issue
true.
doesn't manifest itself to Mass Effect 3.
That is fair. That is very fair, because it is actually kind of retroactively ruined now that I know how this is going to turn out. Where's the garage? I think it's that way. Yeah, it's at the end of the tram. Well, hey, 2 planets done in 9 episodes with time to spare.
Yeah.
Liara's
Are we going to call that an episode?
We got like 20 minutes left, which like we might actually finish all of Liara's in that amount of time. I'm not sure. But I do remember it being, and it's, again, I'm worried that I'm not remembering much of it because maybe there's not a whole lot there, but it does take a while.
I don't think there's a lot there. I think you're supposed to just get Liara and be pretty much.
See, like my recollection is that it takes like half an hour. Is that, yeah, you pop in, you have a couple of gunfights, you have one conversation with Liara, and then you're gone.
Our next move, Commander. Head for the new relay.
The new relay could link to dozens of systems. Unless we know exactly where Saren's going, we'd just be wasting our time.
The commander's right. We can't rush off blind. We need more to go on.
Why isn't Joker in this conversation?
The matriarch's daughter, isn't she some kind of expert on
So, because we are the,
Mother was working for Saren.
I can't think of anything else to talk about. We are the unofficial mag podcast.
Maybe Liara will
What did you think of
At least we should head for
the fact that Gertrude had picked Sasha to be her replacement? Do you think Sasha would have done better?
Sign when I wasn't looking.
Probably. Firstly, if she had been equipped with Gertrude's warning, then that would have gone way better. She would have had a huge head start.
Yeah, I think John would have done a lot better too had he been equipped with Gertrude's
Yeah.
warning.
Sorry.
In fair, I mean, I'm thinking particularly of the time where he took an axe to the one web table. Jonathan Sims seems pretty stupid.
Because he's a tough machine.
I think a lot of people would have done better.
Everyone go get some rest.
I don't feel like we saw very much of Sasha. She is mainly in the seasons where there's very few people talking other than John.
Yeah, she doesn't get developed enough to release a like.
Patch him through, Joker.
Setting up the link.
Apparently, originally, she and Tim's story arcs were. But the person who voice acted Sasha had other commitments, so they had her be replaced by the not them.
Depends on the species, Turian.
The joke I've seen on Tumblr is that Sasha was nerfed for power.
I have a mission to complete.
Yeah, I do think Sasha probably would have done better. For starters, she would not have had Jonathan Sims' whole Scully act.
Because she has the experience in artifact storage. She knows there's some weird shit.
Jonathan Sims had access to more than enough information to realize that there was a lot of weird shit going on. He just didn't use it.
It is kind of implied in the first season that there's some sort of masquerade going on, that either these events kind of cover themselves up, or there's a conspiracy to cover them up, and that plot point kind of gets dropped.
We received information that may be critical to your mission against Saren.
But yeah, there is still enough evidence to figure out.
One of our infiltration regiments in the Traverse.
I'm listening.
Yeah, I mean, Jonathan Sims personally was in a position to find out, even if, the rest of the world, it was all pretty far under wraps. Like, he had access to artifact storage.
Yeah.
His own team were telling him that this shit was real. And that is, I think Sasha just had the trust of and had more trust in her own team.
What did they find?
Unfortunately, the message we received was little more than static. The infiltration team must be in a situation where they can't set up proper interstellar...
Well, the whole point of the arc of this is be essentially the ritual, so... So Jonathan was put in that position basically by the web. There's the question of, what about Sasha? We don't find out enough about her to know, and, unfortunately the way it seems like basically everybody has some sort of supernatural incident in their life.
I'll look into it.
It does. I mean, I could see, it would make sense that Sasha was specifically not chosen because she would just be, a representative of normal humanity. And, that was not the purpose of the Magnus Archive. So, whichever one of Jonah Magnus's incarnations was active at the time, I can't remember if it was Elias yet or not, but, would not have appointed someone who would have been so obviously inimical to their actual goal. I forget which one of these we're looking for. I think it's in the... somewhere in the Artemis Tau cluster. I think this may take longer than... hang on, you're still patched into the ship computer, right? So...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that Liara's dig site is on a fixed planet. Let's just look it up.
Alright. Liara's dig site planet.
Commander, urgent message from Alliance Command coming in. I'll patch it through.
Shepard, this is Admiral Hackett from Alliance Command. We've got a situation here. You're the only one that can handle it.
Well, if Star Trek has taught me anything, it's that admirals are always evil.
Test weapons and technology and live fire simulations. One of the VIs we use to
Therum
tactics and the drills
is the name of the world.
Did it say what system it's in?
Are you telling me this computer is thinking on its own?
We're not stupid, Shepard. This is a virtual intelligence, not a true AI. It's not self-aware, and it can't access any external systems. We didn't do anything illegal here. Virtual intelligence support is critical to our military success. VI has processed thousands of status reports and react.
We're just being very difficult about this.
We need you to fight your way through the training ground of the VI core and manually disable it.
Don't worry, Admiral.
Apparently, Theron was intended to be home of an entire mining facility, complete with on-site workers and CD bar.
Huh.
But that's not really what information you're looking for.
That is kind of interesting. It does speak to how it got cut down.
Here we go. The Kenosis. I don't think that's how you pronounce it, but I'm well past caring.
Yeah, Gnosis. Go. There it is, Therum.
Oh, you know what? Daisy would have been the best archivist. Because she is already super skilled at the most important ability is, which is blowing stuff up.
I mean, that's fair. Granted, some amount of investigative ability is also needed, but you can make a strong argument that Daisy is the addition to the team most needed at that time. That you could let Martin and Tim and Sasha handle all the handle the research, and then Daisy, even if it's weird that she's technically in charge, we've only got one position open. Daisy is the one that just gets sent in to blow it up.
Oh, hey, a lava world.
It is indeed. Do you have any academic insights into lava?
So Sigmund Freud. And you think I'm about to make a joke, I am not.
Oh. Oh.
I think he may have told you this when you theorized that the worship of Yahweh was inspired by the Israelis interacting with a volcano.
I mean, that's not implausible. Like, yeah, but just because it's coming from Sigmund Freud, I would want to see what his evidence is before I... Like, that sounds like it might be a thing, but it also sounds like, you know, Freud may have just had a specific neurotic thing about volcanoes that he decided was a human universal.
Freud was kind of anti-religion. He said, religion is to civilization as mental illness is to the mind.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's sort of how it came off to me, is that, like, I could see this being a real thing, but I could also see it as being something that Freud came up with because he didn't like religion and wanted to trivialize the biggest religion of his time and place. And because he's Sigmund Freud, you know, he was totally happy to basically just extrapolate ludicrously far from the available evidence on that. Like, on the one hand, it would make sense if Yahweh was ultimately, you know, stories about a volcano that got, you know, played a game of telephone with for 500,000 years or whatever. But it's Sigmund Freud talking, so I don't know if I buy it.
I don't think there are any side quests here. I think you just find the Liara.
Yeah, I'm trying to
And
figure out.
I was looking on the wiki.
Up.
Recommended planet. So high fives all around.
It was a very sturdy door.
I don't think that's what you're supposed to do.
It seemed to have worked pretty well, though. Like, we almost got there. See, I was expecting there would be some kind of console or access point. Maybe that thing.
Some sort of bunker.
The only thing I remember about this planet is that, it had a fairly forgettable Mako section, followed by some fairly forgettable gunfights, and like a decent intro conversation with Liara.
It's a pretty linear path, so this is obviously where you're supposed.
Hang on, I think I may have seen a way around. Yeah, I think there's a way through here. I just can't fit the Mako through it.
Oh, so you're supposed to walk.
There. One thing that games with wonky car physics, which were fairly common in this time.
That's too steep to walk. Right? That's way too steep.
Yeah.
Hold on.
No, because I can see it on the map, I just found the wrong spot. Yeah, here we are on the left.
Oh, a jungle gym.
Yeah, a lot of games had wonky car physics around this time. But most of them also had the good sense to allow you to bail out of the car.
So, are there any good sci-fi tabletop RPGs?
None that I can think of off the top of my head. I have not read or played Eclipse Phase. That one tries to make hard sci-fi work, even in light of, like, modern understanding of science. I've heard they do a good job of it. I mean, I'm skeptical just on the grounds that I think hard sci-fi is dead. I think the singularity plays too much into some kind of singularity, I should say. Either the two main ones, computers become so intelligent that they overtake humanity, for better or for worse, or humans keep up through augmentation, at which point we overtake our modern selves, and either way, your protagonists are superhuman intelligences whose actions you cannot predict. I think the only way this doesn't happen is either there is a bizarre Black Swan event, which happens all the time in history, so don't count it out, but there's no way that hard sci-fi can account for that. Or there is some kind of apocalypse, in which case we're not doing sci-fi anymore, we're now doing post-apocalyptic fiction, which is a kind of sci-fi, but it's not hard sci-fi. Even if it is hard, it's not really about predicting future technologies in the way that you think of when you hear hard sci-fi. With that said, I have not read Eclipse Phase, and I cannot say for sure whether or not it actually fails at that, so
What about, I've never played this game, so I have no idea. You could probably argue about whether it is...
if you said something, it didn't come through.
What about Shadowrun?
Ah, Shadowrun. It depends on what you're looking for, because, it's cyberpunk, and then it is also cyberpunk fantasy, so that's kind of a very specific thing. And it also depends on which edition you're looking at, but overall, I would say it is pretty good, if a little overcomplex.
Yeah, I don't like point-buy systems, because having, everything be fungible against itself is can lead to option paralysis and can very easily end up with a very bad build. Like, also,
I like point by character advancement. I dislike point by character creation.
like I've played briefly in a GURPS game, and it was like I had to take like 5 hours to make a character.
Yeah.
And I don't think I made a very good one. It's like, so complicated. So, yeah.
Mass Effect generates a shocking amount of heat.
And what about lasers and feelings?
That one is actually quite good. It's obviously extremely simplistic. It's very much built for one-shots. You could make a campaign out of it, but it would have to be a campaign of one-shots. You know, it's like essentially an episodic TV show, which, in fairness, is entirely on theme.
We played through Game of Lasers and Feelings.
I think it went fantastic. It may get posted someday. I do still have the footage. No promises, but on the table.
So which entity is Endymion a servant of? The corruption?
Well, I mean, there's the bug connection, but I would say probably the web. Okay, I've arrived at the end of the path, so I assume the door is around here somewhere, but... like, this sure seems to lead somewhere.
It looks like a door.
But neither of these two things open. Like, I do seem to recall entering into the dig site through a door that looked kind of like that.
Now, what about the game system that Cyberpunk 2077 was based upon? I don't know. I don't have any experience with that. I don't know if you do.
I haven't. I will say that the buzz that I hear about it seems like a lot of, oh, this was my first RPG in the 80s, and I love it for that reason and that reason only. Once again, shockingly durable.
It's got to be one of these doors.
Oh, hey, I don't think I tried that one.
What about Paranoia?
Oh, yeah, Paranoia is absolutely fantastic. The most recent edition is actually quite playable. Earlier editions tended to suffer from 1980s design. Paranoia's selling point is always its weird party system.
Yeah. It's got to be one of these big things, right?
It feels like it probably has to be, but I thought I already tried that one. Maybe it was this one I haven't tried yet. Pretty sure I did try this one, though.
But talk about Paranoia while we try to figure this out.
But yeah, obviously Paranoia's biggest selling point has always been its comedy tone, its dark comedy setting, and, the idea of things like clones and player characters being pitted against each other, and the expectation that you won't necessarily succeed, and that it might not even be a good idea to succeed. Like, it might not even be good for society if you succeed, because you are the wet work team for an insane rogue AI that's taken over the entire city. But, oh, hang on, is that something? Or is that just a particularly detailed part of the wall?
Should we mention that idea I had that was gonna, like, I'm trying to... the warning on EA.
I mean, because for starters, like, I think in order to make that, like, for the context of that idea, like, there's a lot of groundwork. So unless we want to go into all of algorithm, which we could, but
I don't know how much time we have left on this episode, and I can't imagine it.
Yeah, we got like 10 or 15 minutes. Algorithm is pretty complex. I do like it, but I also might want to hold on to it just because I am hoping to, at some point, do an actual play of that. I think it would be fantastic for an actual play. It's a, algorithm is a paranoia setting. It's a specific take on Alpha Complex. There's a lot of changes to the normal setting, but I think it keeps the spirit very much alive. And that comedy tone and of, people bouncing off each other, I think it's great for actual play. More people should do paranoia actual plays. What the hell just happened?
What about a Star Wars Saga edition?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like that's better described as space fantasy than sci-fi. I feel like the sort of the vibe that the feeling that you get from a Star Wars game is much closer to that of a fantasy setting than to that of a sci-fi setting. Star Wars is not really exploring strange new societies, but is rather exploring very old archetypes, which is obviously, also a perfectly good thing to do. Fantasy is just... I now have the hiccups, so that's neat. Fantasy is, just as valid a thing to have as sci-fi, but it's not something I think of when I think of a good sci-fi setting. Nevertheless, it is good, and I do think Saga Edition is probably the best that setting has had. Now, I haven't played or run the West End games.
So you need to get through this door. This is what got you confused, because you went through the wrong open door.
Right. Yeah, so I haven't played the West End Games version. With that said, although it was very innovative for its time, one of the first places to use dice pools, it is not super great by modern standards, and I do think Saga Edition is just a lot simpler without really losing any meaningful decisions. I think that some of the West End game stuff did something that a lot of Star Wars expansion content did, which is that it thought that Star Wars was a sci-fi setting, and it leaned too much on sci-fi tropes that don't really belong there. You do not want to try and do stories about real robots with droids. Droids are people who eat batteries instead of food. Or sometimes animals, but still.
Like Ferrum.
Basically, yeah.
He's about to get an upgrade that he can talk to animals. And I'm looking forward to that.
Yep, I'm still going the right way. But yeah, so Star Wars Saga Edition is really good if you're familiar with any of the D20 systems, particularly 3rd edition, although it does also have some stuff borrowed from 4th edition, but not any of the really shitty stuff, so it's fine. But if you only know 5th edition D&D, then 3rd edition isn't that different. You'll be able to pick up Star Wars Saga Edition without too much difficulty, which is a big plus in its favor because it means it's easier to find players for. When you can sell them on it by saying, hey, you know this game you already know? Well, it's 80% the same as that. More RPGs should set out to, as much as they can be without sacrificing, the uniqueness of their setting, they should be setting out to be similar to existing RPGs. Alright, a big learning curve is not a selling point. It's not a feature. But, yes, I do think. So Saga Edition is good for that. The West End Games version was good for its time, but I do find it's mired down in a lot of very 80s design, and it's just not very good anymore. Not by modern standards. There is a lot of great lore buried in there, but a lot of it also thinks that Star Wars is more sci-fi than it is. So, of course, the one that I'm not mentioning so far is the FFG version, which has tons of great ideas in it. Unfortunately, all those ideas are built upon an absolutely atrocious dice system, which does not seem to accomplish anything except for, requiring you to buy weird dice. Every time I've heard someone try to defend the FFG die system, it has always immediately revealed that they have just no ability to design role-playing games at all.
We might be biased against Fantasy Flight Games, though.
I mean, I was of this opinion even before they went full capitalist supervillain. For anyone who's not aware, Fantasy Flight Games took down a popular mod for Tabletop Simulator that we had been using to record a playthrough of their game.
At the very start of the pandemic.
Yeah, at the start of the pandemic, specifically because people needed a reason to stay at home. I would not have... I lost my train of thought halfway through, which is bad because that's the important context. taking down mods at all, right? Like, I mean, as a creator, for the record, I personally don't do that shit. I actually contributed one of my PDFs to the Trove. But there's someone in like a thread somewhere, I think on 4chan, but I forget where, I got linked to it, asking for it. And I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and contributed it. And then they asked for another one. And I was like, dude, figure out how to pirate your own shit. I'm here to hold your hand. But yeah, like, for starters, I, as a creator, am very blasé about piracy. You know, I figure people will pirate shit if they want to, and I can't really stop them. And I don't want to inconvenience any of my real customers for doing it, especially once something once the sales on something have mostly broken off.
Yeah, it stops mattering.
Yeah, like... But, in addition to that, and in fairness, the sales on this product probably hadn't broken off, but this was at the start of the pandemic, presumably specifically because they were hoping to profit off of the pandemic. Which, not to mention, the playthrough that we were recording relied... And the mod we were using had every card, and because it is a collectible card game, it is the Arkham Horror collectible card game, is what we were doing for the curious. So I'm not sure how many of the cards in our specific decks were cards that I physically own, but I do know the campaign we were playing is one that I physically owned. Because, you know, before this happened, I was perfectly happy to buy their shit. So the only thing using the modded version did was allow us to record it easily and allow me to share my set with someone who lived several states away.
Yeah, we live miles and miles away, so like them preventing this to not get me to buy it, like, because I can't play with Cam with a actual physical deck. So live thousands of miles away from each other, and like even if like,
and I physically own enough cards to let him play anyway. So even if he lived next door to me, he would not have to buy any additional cards. He could just borrow mine.
Well, and the other thing is, like, even if I did live next door, either did not have enough or was refusing to let me use it while I played, it's like, sort of pandemic, I'm not going to go over to Cam's apartment and just to have a game night when, you know, the only scenario where... Like, the amount of contrivances that have to happen to get by a deck in this scenario, because, like, not only do I have to live in Utah, Cam has to refuse to let me use his cards for some reason, and also I have to be his roommate, essentially.
Right. Because, yeah, at the start of the pandemic, people mostly will not and should not be having game nights anymore. Especially because this is early on in the pandemic. We had no idea how dangerous it was. It turned out to be relatively tame compared to some of the expectations that we had. Early on, we had no idea. It could have gotten really bad. And FFG is just flagrantly disregarding safety protocols by trying to encourage people to go out and buy physical cards to have game nights with each other in person. If they had a digital version, right, like for sale, then I think this would have been fine. I probably would have bought that to use it anyway. And if I didn't buy it to use it through that anyway, it would have just been out of being too lazy to learn a new interface, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So certainly I am biased against FFG on account of they turned out to be evil. But also, I mean, you know, I held this opinion before. The FFG Star Wars dice system is genuinely not good for anything. It is a barrier to entry that accomplishes nothing except, you know, making it much harder to learn how to play the game. And selling FFG dice, which I was always kind of suspicious that was their... Oh, goddammit, Shepard, heal.
I think if you die, we should call it.
There. I don't know why it took so long to heal, but... finally fucking happened. What was my healing possibly on cooldown from? Okay, now I need my assault rifle back. But yeah, the dice system is just not good, and unfortunately, and there is plenty of good design built on top of that dice system, but unfortunately, it is all built on top of that dice system, which of course, you use constantly.
What about Starfinder? The Pathfinder in space.
I wish I could do the thing Yahtzee does, where he just makes like a strained gurgling noise at the back of his throat. Unfortunately, I can't do that on command.
I know very little about it.
I intensely despise its lore. It slams fantasy and sci-fi together and does basically no effort to make them fit together. Now, it is perfectly possible to slam fantasy and sci-fi together in an interesting way, but you cannot just take the fantasy parts and then the sci-fi parts and, staple them together.
They do have space hags.
I mean, yes, but not in a fun way. They just have hags, and then they took space adverbs and stuck them in front.
All right, what about Cthulhu Tech?
I feel like the need for the strained gurgling noise is only redoubled.
What are the issues with Cthulhu Tech?
Firstly, it is a pretty unironic and unexamined take on Lovecraft, which has all the problems of unironic and unexamined takes on Lovecraft. Secondly, there is a lot of White Wolf-style edgy shock fodder in it, where it's just, extremely horrible things happening for basically no other reason except to have extremely horrible things happen, because that makes us mature. Your grandma wouldn't play this game. There we go, finally. Was I supposed to fight this tank on foot? I feel like maybe I wasn't.
Oh well.
I'm not sure how I'm supposed to get the Mako in here, but... But yeah, also my opinion on Cthulhu Tech is that despite having read the entire core book, I cannot remember a single thing about the core mechanics, which does not speak well to, how memorable they were. I cannot even remember. I think it's a dice pool, but, I wouldn't bet money on that even.
So what are the advantages of a dice pool versus D20? What is the difference?
Yeah, well, for starters, let me say that those are, a dice pool and a rollover system of some kind are basically the two kinds of dice mechanics you should seriously be looking at. There are games out there that have used other dice mechanics well, but virtually every person who, needs advice at all to design games, like anyone who is not already a veteran game designer who knows what they're doing and tries to do something with weird dice, it's always a bad idea. Your weird dice are not a selling point. They're not a feature of your game. It just makes it harder to learn how to play. So the good thing about a D20 or a 3D6, 2D10, you could also do 2D6 so long as you adjust all the math downward to compensate, whatever. Something where you roll a die, add a modifier, and then if that modifier equals or exceeds the target number, you succeed. A rollover system. The good thing about it is that it is possible to have distinct tiers of gameplay without having to hard code them in. Once you are about 9 or 10 points ahead on a D20 system, right, then the odds that the character that you had when you started, 9 or 10 points ago, will have any chance of defeating you are very low. Once you're 20 points ahead, it's actually impossible. So this is great for games like D&D, where you are expected to start out fighting goblins and end up fighting gods. That's funny. I thought you were supposed to be crazy by now. Did I do this wrong? Maybe I need to do some more side quests. Oh well. Yeah, this is your normal dialogue. God damn it.
That's very
disappointing. Here it
Oh,
goes.
yay!
Here is the crazy dialogue. We do unfortunately have to just read it out, but
Oh, you be Shepard and I'll be Liara. You're oddly lucid for hallucination. They don't usually claim to be real.
I don't know if this is going to work.
Or do they? So we don't want to do that?
I mean, I'm kind of going back and forth on it, which I kind of feel like means you probably shouldn't, because if we did that, we'd have to absolutely commit to it. A Spectre is your idea of a protector figure? Yeah. Well, I've so far come up with 4 good ways to deal with the Geth. Although, I gotta tell you, the assault rifle seems to be the best solution in most cases.
Why does she have eyebrows? She doesn't have hair.
It's a good question.
Like, I just noticed that and it's bothering me. I don't think the other Asari have eyebrows.
I have not been paying attention, so I have no idea. But yeah, D20 rollover system is good for essentially unlimited escalation. You know, you can add any number to a D20, and so long as you and the opposition are both within about 10 points of each other, it'll always be balanced, right? If you're adding a plus 40 to your rolls and the opposition is adding a plus 35, that simultaneously means that you are multiple tiers better than, you know, a starting character with like a plus 4, but also that you are still balanced with that enemy. A dice pool, on the other hand, is good for when you don't want clear tiers ever. You want all characters to always be on more or less the same tier as each other, even if one character is phenomenally more likely to succeed. In a dice pool, it is always possible to roll 0 hits.
It looks like some Asari do have eyebrows, but I still think it's weird because they're not mammals.
Oh, also, any roll under dice system is better off as a rollover dice system. Roll under is only superior in the single circumstance of when you want to make a check that is not opposed and is a perfectly ordinary difficulty. This happens very rarely.
Oh, is this a Simon Says thing?
It either goes off of audio cues or else it is just a brute force thing. Luckily, I seem to have infinite tries, so...
Alright, with this massive mining laser, we can finally defeat Liara. That's what we're trying to do, right? She's the boss.
I mean, I came here to defeat the rocks. Alright, Liara, I'm either going to save you or get me trapped. I'm pretty sure all three of those options led to the same thing. I wouldn't get too excited about that, Liara. You could also hallucinate detonations. Strange. This appears to be some kind of Tower of Hanoi-based interface.
Oh, now you have the boss fight.
Yeah, it's like a bunch of Krogan in here. For some reason, Saren just has an unlimited number of Krogan mercenaries. No one else ever seems to have Krogan mercenaries.
If she is, she's dead.
I can confidently tell you that Venezia is not involved.
Anymore.
Shh. Wait, what? Why do we care how fast the Normandy gets here? We just need to get to the surface. Like, the Normandy can't reach us from this position, and once we're on the surface where the Normandy can reach us, we will no longer be in danger. Unless, is this whole place gonna, like, cave in? Like, will the ground outside collapse under our feet?
We're about to fight a load-bearing boss. Are we going to do any loyalty missions?
Wait, do they have those in this one? I thought that was Mass Effect 2.
Yeah, they're loyalty missions. Because that's how you keep the Krogan on the team from betraying you.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. I mean, I guess we've still got time. I'm pretty sure we don't get locked out of anything until we go to planet Prothea. Ah, this Krogan is using my secret weakness. Processor lag. My frame rate stutters when he gets too close. And also, he just kind of fell through the wall when he died there. That's probably fine. I say, after having stopped to enjoy the falling rocks.
Yeah, basically just a dungeon crawl.
Apparently it was supposed to be more, but... I do feel like the intended order was almost certainly Liara, Pharos, and then Noveria. Who is this we we're talking about? You were in the ship. You could have just left.
We should know that on Earth, Asari are considered the most so
Sorry, I considered the most what?
exquisite of delicacies.
Yeah, we don't want this one. She's some weird mutant with eyebrows. I have no evidence, but I'm definitely right.
I like the Prothean design in Mass Effect 1 better than the updated design in the later.
Yeah, I mean...
And I hated that they had an actual Prothean showed up. They explained way too much. Like, don't have an actual Prothean show up. They're a dead race. They're more interesting. Like, having somebody, like, an actual Prothean you could just talk to, like, it was dumb.
And the Prothean guy was a DLC character, wasn't he? Which
yeah,
is definitely one of those, you know, lighting the setting on fire so that they could have a real headline DLC.